following on from our comparison of the Oculus Quest 2 against the Oculus Quest 3, in this video I'm going to be directly comparing the Valve Index to the Oculus Quest 3. And I'm going to be explaining why the Valve Index, which was my favourite VR headset, all-round VR headset, has been replaced by the Quest 3 as my favourite VR headset. Very sad indeed, I know. Now, this video is going to focus mostly on using these headsets with racing simulators and PC use, because that is what I tend to use my VR headsets for. Flight sim, driving sim, PC sims. I will also be talking about the general comfort and some other aspects of it, but because of that simulator focus, the main thing is the sort of screen quality, the eye comfort, and what these devices are like to use when you're actually sat in a sim rig and not moving around too much. So fasten your seatbelts and let's get on with the video.
If you subscribe to this channel, I guarantee you will regret it. But not as much as people using the Gamer Muscle Amazon affiliate links to buy VR headsets, VR cables, and copious amounts of toilet paper. And certainly not as much as these people who send us money every month. Oh my god, what is wrong with them? Thank you guys.
Right, so getting straight to the point, for those of you that have no patience at all, the Quest 3 absolutely demolishes the Valve Index when it comes to pancake lenses and raw clarity of image. The Valve Index image on this headset just looks sharper, it's sharper from the center to the edge, and crucially, and most crucially, and this is why I'm the biggest fan of pancakes, even more than Nathy, go check out his channel if you haven't, is the fact that the sweet spot is absolutely ginormous on the Quest 3. Though I have noticed after fiddling more that the vertical sweet spot is smaller than the horizontal sweet spot, though it's still absolutely ginormous. The area where your eyes can sit whilst getting a bloody fantastic sharp image is really big with this, so you don't have to fiddle around with it and dial it in like with the Valve Index just to get a sharp image. And in fact, when I was trying to capture through the lens footage, it's so much easier with the Quest 3 because you can just put the camera vaguely in the right spot and move it around and it all looks quite sharp. Whereas I noticed even trying to capture through the lens image on the Valve Index, it's like, oh, it's not in the right place. Oh, it's a bit left. Oh, it's blurry. It's a bit high. It's blurry. I've got it in the middle of the right place. Okay, now the centre's sharp, but the edge is blurry. You know, it's just that alone, that single thing alone, absolutely destroys the Valve Index in any other headset that doesn't have that sweet spot area. And the reason for that, and the reason why that's so vital, is that if you do a lot of VR, you're moving around normally, if you're doing room scale especially, your headset's going to move a little bit, and even when you're in a sim rig and you're driving, your headset will move a little bit. It might fall down your head a little bit, it might move left and right a little bit, and then with this headset you're going to have to adjust it again, move it, tweak it. All the images are just going to be blurry because it'll happen slowly and you'll be like, oh, it feels a bit off, and you haven't really noticed, and your eyes start getting fatigued, where your eyes just don't get fatigued with this. A big difference, of course, with the Valve Index over the Quest 3 is that the Valve Index plugs straight into a HDMI port. Now that does mean that obviously you get the raw fidelity of a HDMI image sent straight to the headset. The computer doesn't have to process and encode a video to then send through USB like it does on the Quest 3. So you in theory get slightly better frames, and in theory you get better image quality. However, I did bump up Automobilista 2 and some other games to 2x super sampling with additional sharpening and a whole bunch of stuff, and even then, and that's running stuff, so it was running at a very low frame rate just to see what if I sent an absolutely absurd quality image to the headset, even then it just doesn't compare to the Quest 3. Even the Quest 3 on like the wrong resolution and bad settings looks better image quality than the Valve Index, and that's obviously, as I say, that's with it going through a USB cable. When you set up the Quest 3 using good settings, check out our Quest 3 link cable settings guide, or if you're using virtual desktop with that set up well, The image is just absolutely phenomenal. It's basically like a sort of 1080p screen image, but for more of your vision than what you get with the Valve Index, which is kind of just generally blurry, whatever you do. I mean, when I got the Valve Index and I used it, and obviously I've had a DK1, DK2, CV1, HTC Vive. I've got pretty much all the headsets. When you first use this, it's actually not terrible. It's totally usable. You can play most games really nicely, but you really do notice with driving simulators, looking into the distance, and just in general, that it is really quite blurry. Just the raw resolution or the density of how the pixels come through the screen, through the lenses to your eyes. You really do notice it. Whereas with the Quest 3, not only is it higher resolution than the Valve Index, but the way the lenses focus the pixels on the screen, and then the way the image is distorted on the screen, sent through the lenses to your eyes, means that the density or the detail density of the image that you're seeing it's just so much better, so much sharper, so much more clear. This when you go from Quest 3 to Valve Index side by side, it feels like you need to put glasses on when you use this. Which is weird, because when I used this first, and I used this for quite a long time, played Half-Life Alyx, a whole bunch of games, I was like, oh, this is all right. But now I put this on, then put this on, I'm like, oh dear God, how did I put up with that? It's like when you go back and you play GoldenEye on the N64, and you're like, I'm sure this was high resolution. I don't remember this running at 15 frames per second. Well, I do remember it running at 5 frames per second when you do archive slappers with landmines all over the map. But you know, the difference really side by side is absolutely just breaks your brain how different it is. And I would struggle. I don't know how anyone could go from this and then go back to this without feeling depressed, sadly. And then the thing is, the real thing is, with the Quest 3 over the Index, and I've noticed this with compared to a lot of headsets with the Quest 3, is that its sharpness, and the sharpness to the edge, the pancake sharpness, crucially, it allows your eyes to not be stressed trying to resolve a blurred image, and the comfort on your eyes and just the general comfort experience of this device is absolutely on another level to this headset and other VR headsets I've used. I think for people that have tried VR and gone, oh, I feel a bit weird afterwards, it might not even be motion sickness. Obviously, motion sickness can affect people, and that will be careful with that. But it could be that you didn't actually have motion sickness. It could be, especially if you're getting headaches and your eyes felt a bit weird, could just be that the image was blurry on the headsets you've used. You know, just all the nature of the lenses. And this really, really, really does change that aspect of things. It really is transformative in that sort of raw comfort level of things. Now, another component that a lot of people are really interested in is field of view. And obviously that was a really big thing with the Valve Index, is that it's one of the headsets that was, for its price and comfort and everything else, has a really good field of view. And this is the big problem that we had with the Quest 2, the Rift S, and other headsets that maybe picked this in terms of visual fidelity. The field of view was always too small on them. And the nice thing is, with the Quest 3, categorically, its field of view is very comparable to the Valve Index. I would say the Valve Index does feel a couple of degrees wider field of view, like 3 or 4 degrees wider field of view. But those edge degrees of field of view are so blurred and the image is so blurry, it's utterly irrelevant to the perception of field of view when you're actually using the headset. And when you're using this, it feels like you have a larger field of view than the Valve Index, or it feels like you've got the same field of view at worst, but everything's sharp, so you don't feel cramped off, if that makes sense, or clamped in, or head crabs faced. So, and what I've really learnt is that what I found is with the Valve Index, when I played other VR headsets, used other VR headsets, the field of view of them basically meant that they didn't feel like virtual reality headsets. I like the immersion that I would get from a Rift S, a Quest 2, even the Vario Aero, and I'm trying to think of other headsets, or just other headsets on the market. The HTC Vive and the Valve Index, to me, got me into the game, and I was like, oh, it's because of the lenses and other stuff. But I think largely what it was the field of view has to, I think, surpass about 105 degrees maybe, and I think below that you lose the feeling of you being in a virtual world, and you start to feel more and more like I'm looking at a screen that has really good head tracking and good 3D. Now, I do think there's going to be like a psychological and subjective component to that, and I think if you've only used lower field of view headsets and that's your only reference, you might be like, oh, that I felt like I was immersed in the game. And I do think the Rift S and other VR headsets are still very immersive, but there seems to be a trigger in the brain, I think, once you pass about 105 degrees, where it's probably because the edges of your eyes detect motion more, and they, you know, the arrangement of how your eyes sense light and movement and how your brain processes that. There's a certain point where your brain really goes, I'm in something. And there's a certain point where your brain goes, oh, I'm kind of looking through small goggles, or I'm looking at a screen of some kind. There's going to be a huge degree of subjectivity to that, and experience, and what gives you that perception and what throws you into it. But crucially, the Quest 3 has that really high resolution and clarity and enough field of view to really draw you into that virtual world, which is something, as I say, most other VR headsets haven't done. And then also comparing the Quest 3, for example, to the Pimax 5K. This is an Index Quest 3 but comparison, but with the Pimax 5K, that has a really wide field of view, but then the image is like a bit weirdly distorted, not totally sharp. So the problem with that is, it's technically there, but it just doesn't work like reality. So again, it just doesn't feel quite right, whereas the image that this gets feels right. Now, one of the things I liked about the Valve Index, actually, again on the image quality and distortion and stuff, is I always found the Valve Index very comfortable for like looking around with the headset. Like the way it renders and distorts the image is quite a natural view of the game. Like when you rotate your head, things don't seem to warp and distort too much, and it feels really nice. Which is, I've had a problem with that with the Rift S, for example, and some other headsets on the market, where when you move, things just look a bit distorted. And I'll say as well, the Quest 3 does a superb job with that. It's just like no real, just a tiny bit of distortion when you look around, but like so negligible. It's basically the same sort of thing that you've got with the Valve Index, and again, that massively reduces, I think, headaches, motion sickness, VR sickness. It just feels very, very natural. The other thing is, because that sweet spot box is so small on the Valve Index, what you end up doing is you end up strapping the headset onto your head really, really tight, so that it doesn't move, especially if you're doing room scale stuff. But then the result of that is that you then feel like you've got a head crab on your face and you're clamped in, which maybe makes playing Half-Life Alyx more immersive in some ways, but it really reduces comfort massively. Whereas with the Quest 3, I'm using this Mobo VR strap, and I've taken off the I'm using a custom facial visor interface, but I've taken the sponge off it, and basically the headset is not touching my face. It's like lightly resting on my nose a tiny bit. It's closing off the light, but it's really not touching my face, and it's just balanced on my head like a baseball cap. And that is so airy, light, and I've got a nice little fan here that blows a bit of air, and it doesn't really matter if it moves a little bit. It's unbelievable. It's like when it feels like a baseball cap that's given me virtual reality, rather than having a head crab clamped to my face. Now, if I was doing room scale stuff, I'd probably put the phone back on. I would still clamp it to my face a bit. One of the things with this Bobo head strap is that if you move your head left and right, it will wobble and stuff. They think they've improved that with the S3. I've not tried that yet, but you can put the head strap on there, you can tighten it, it won't move at all. But you still, even then, you still don't have to clamp it to your head. to the degree that you need to with a lot of other VR headsets on the market, and especially the Valve Index. Now, it has to be said, though, as I say, the Quest 3 for me just absolutely destroys the Valve Index. It has to be said, the Valve Index out of the box, the speakers these are my favourite headphone speakers on any device. Why is this just not normal for headphones and everything? And also, when you buy the Valve Index out of the box, the quality of it just feels absolutely superb. The materials, the magnetic facial interface that you can remove, as I say, the headphones, the head strap, the general sort of base quality of this headset feels a lot more better than the Quest 3 out of the box, and you really don't need to do anything to the Valve Index out of the box. Whereas the Quest 3, you categorically do have to buy a head strap of some kind. Yeah, you're going to have to spend an extra £50 to £100 on the Quest 3 to really get it to absolutely shine over the Valve Index. So, you know, I do really like the Valve Index. Now, one thing with the Valve Index, of course, is that it uses lighthouses for tracking, which is, again, a bit of a pain in the arse if you're doing Sims especially. And just generally, if you're going from room to room, you have to set up your lighthouses. But, so the lighthouses definitely do have higher quality tracking fidelity in terms of absolute raw resolution. You notice it when you use the hand controllers very subtly, if you've got two lighthouses, that is. And obviously this might not apply to Sims too much, but if you're playing the first-person shooter game or you're being very accurate with shooting games, your controllers don't need as much smoothing as they do on the Quest 3 or any headset that uses just camera tracking. So you do notice that the hand tracking, the raw fidelity of the tracking is quite a bit better with this. Not enough that it's a problem to ruin games, mind you. Like, this is totally fine. It's not the be all and end all, but I would say, you know, if you were talking VR esports levels of things, the tracking is noticeably better for hand controllers with this device. Though, one thing is, because the Valve Index does so much of the tracking using the lighthouse and the sensors on here that then pick up the lighthouse, sadly, you do get an issue where if you're holding your head totally stable with the Valve Index, you'll notice the VR view sort of does this like very, very small micro movement that's not smoothed out. It's like a sudden jump around as it sort of recenters itself, like calibrates itself constantly. It's really, really small, and I think a lot of people wouldn't notice it at all. It's like it's probably like a millimeter or sub-millimeter movement, and you only really notice it if you're absolutely still in a driving simulator. If you're playing room scale, your basic breathing and moving will negate it. But I noticed that when I'm playing driving sims, that little, and looking at menus or watching something, that little movement actually does affect me for motion sickness a little bit. I notice it as something that's off, and that is something you just don't get with the Quest 3, because it either smooths it out and averages it, or the IMU and the way that processes the data. A lot of the movement data is done with the accelerometers in these and the hand controllers, and the cameras just used as a way to ground the device. But the headset always just is totally rock solid, smooth, no like wobbling and stuff. So that actually makes quite a big difference with the Quest 3 over the Valve Index, especially when you're playing sat-down driving games or flight simulators. The other thing is with the tracking, if this loses tracking from one of the lighthouses, it can really do like weird judders completely, or the screen could just turn off. Now, if you set your lighthouses up properly, it's quite rare to happen. But even then, in room scale stuff, I have noticed that you bend over in a certain way and the screen goes off, or your hand controller loses tracking and the hand controller sort of floats off. That sort of thing really doesn't happen with the Quest 3. I've never really lost the sense of head tracking with the view turning off. And the hand tracking on the Quest 3, sure, if you put your hands behind you and around you and stuff, that's not as good, generally speaking, than the Valve Index. But normally, in the vast majority of gaming and use cases, I find the controller tracking absolutely perfectly fine with the Quest 3. So yeah, I think lighthouses, sadly, apart from specific uses, are just on the way out. I'd imagine the next Valve Index would just do inside out tracking Who can be bothered to stick lighthouses in their walls? I mean, drill a hole in your wall for VR. Look, we did what we had to do to get the best VR, and that's just the march of technology. Basically, that's it for the Valve Index. Goodbye. It's been good to know you, Mr. Index. I would like. I mean, come on, Valve just needs to do a pancake VR headset that has inside-out tracking, takes the stuff that's good from this, but then is largely PC-based, or maybe even has a little portable computer, like the Steam Deck, but for VR or something. I don't know. Come on, Valve, what are you playing at? You know you'll make the next best VR device for us mega PC nerds. But yeah, the Quest 3, if you've got a Valve Index, I would definitely say the Quest 3 is well worth the upgrade. If you're on PC, you could just get the 128 gig Quest 3, really. Quest 3 is not a perfect device. There is some shenanigans with the USB cable, and especially like with the charging cable I have, the InnerU cable, link in the description, you do have to plug it in a certain order to get it to charge through the cable at the same time, and or you do have to buy a head strap which has a battery on it, but then you've got a wireless headset over Wi-Fi that works really well. So is that a con or is it a pro? Like, I can tell you as well, if you're doing room scale games and you've got a cable coming off the back of your headset, even when it's like really good, like this Valve Index, the cable is annoying. And when I play like Onwards and Pavlov with this, not having a cable, even if you stood forwards mostly, is liberating. You'd have to remember to like uncoil yourself. You can just put your headset on and play. So yeah, you know, I put up with that USB, some of the weird accessory stuff, because altogether this is just really on another level when you consider everything about this device. The only thing that the Valve Index really that is hard to beat are these headphones. Can we just have these headphones on everything? So good. It's like Speak headphones. I'm in love with them. And then out of the box, you know, as I say, the out of the box quality and everything in the box is really nice. But it's quite an expensive headset, isn't it? So, right, you know, that's it basically. Not much more to say. I could just quickly, for those of you that might be wondering and still here because you're desperately deciding what you're going to waste money on, I will say as well, to compare the controllers, a nice thing with the Quest 3 controllers is if you're using it on PC, first of all, you can use the head tracking to use hand controllers to select, launch the link thing. You can poke on the screen. The hand tracking is not very good. It's a little bit finicky. But if you're just watching a video on your VR headset, or as I say, you're doing a driving sim and you just want to pop the headset on and do a reset or do a quick thing, you don't even need to get a controller out. So that's a really big thing compared to the Valve Index. Also, the controllers, because they're much more simple shape, they're easier to just put down somewhere and then grab it without even concentrating. But if you're actually in VR playing like a first-person shooter or really immersive game, the Index controllers are more satisfying to use due to the way the wrist strap and everything works. You can mod these and get a wrist strap type solution, which is really nice. The joystick on the Quest 3 is pretty similar to the one that's on the Valve Index. They both feel pretty floppy and sloppy joysticks, but I had the thing on the Valve Index. This can feel a little bit grainy at times, a bit inconsistent in movement, especially when you've used them quite a lot. you all know the drift stories and the issues people have with the joysticks on the Valve Index controllers. These don't feel, they feel kind of a bit cheap and tacky still, the analog stick, especially compared to like an Xbox 360 or Xbox One controller. But the movement is very smooth and consistent. And then the analog trigger feels really nice, pretty much the same. Doesn't have a detent to it, unfortunately, which is a shame because that'd be nice. Vibration is very weak on the Quest 3 controller. The vibration on this comes from the little sort of haptic pad on the top. A little bit more punchy, a little bit more detailed on these controllers. But this is fine, really. And you know, it's generally again comes back down to just the raw convenience and simplicity. This actually tends to, on average, pip this apart from certain specific game use cases. So that's the controllers, and there you go. Wasn't that an exciting video? If you got this far in the video, type in the comments, Gamer Muscle, why do I waste my life watching this channel? I'm questioning my life choices. And as I say, if you do decide to waste your money on technology that you really don't need, feel free to use my Amazon affiliate link. I also have a Meta link if you're getting a Quest 3, that is. Or if you're buying toilet paper, I have a link for that. You can just click that in the description. That really helps support the channel. I really appreciate it. It allows me to make these more sort of niche videos for my channel, at least, because we're not like more of a sim channel. Though we did do lots of VR videos like 10 years ago, but I wouldn't really say we're a VR channel. So these videos are very niche for my audience. So yeah, use my links if you want to support us. But hopefully that was useful. And sorry again for making you waste money if I did. But until the next one, might as well say it. Leave comments, questions. I'll try and answer them. There you go. Try and be helpful. Might as well. But until the next one, take care. Happy tea drinking. And goodbye, guys.